Hook is a 1991 film that was directed by Steven Spielberg, and the plot is we meet Peter Banning, played by Robin Williams, who is this big-time successful corporate lawyer. He's on the brink of making this big deal, but he's not there for his family, for his kids. In fact, he's made so many empty promises to them that it's really hurting their relationship until one night, both his kids get kidnapped. They're kidnapped by Captain Hook. And if that's not weird enough, Robin Williams finds out that he is Peter Pan himself. So he has to go back to the Neverland and save his children. Now, what I think of Hook is, it's funny because as a kid, I watched this movie so many times, over and over again, and I loved it as a kid. Rewatching it now, though, I still like the movie. I do, but I do admit it's not as great and perfect as I once remember it. Let's talk about Robin Williams as Peter Banning, because I actually like the setup of this movie. I know certain critics actually a lot of people bashed this movie at the time when it came out. Roger Ebert in particular said that he wished Steven Spielberg just remade the original story because he doesn't like what he did with this script. One thing Ebert said, though, that kind of threw me off was that he said this movie wasn't different or original enough. And I'm like, what? Because when you see the setup of this movie, it's that Peter Pan grew up. He left Neverland because he fell in love with this girl. He's had kids. He's had a normal life. And in fact, he's been away from Neverland for so long that he's forgotten all about it. He's lost his powers and he's an actual, real grown-up. And seeing Robin Williams play this grown-up corporate person, he's good. And he does come off as, obviously he cares about his family, but it's almost like he's the a-hole for being so wrapped up into his work. In the moment where his kids get kidnapped and Julia Roberts shows up as Tinkerbell, I did not remember that Julia Roberts was Tinkerbell. That kind of threw me off watching that. But she brings him to Neverland, and seeing how he acts when he's in this place and dealing with all these characters, it's comical, it's funny. And how these people are telling him that he is Peter Pan, but he has no idea what they're talking about. And when Tinkerbell takes him to the group of kids, and they're all trying to help him remember, trying to help him have an imagination again. And when he does start to get that back, and he does start to indulge in it, I enjoy some of that stuff. Again, I like the story of this. I do think it was a different, cool way to have it start off in the real world and then slowly get into the mystique and the fantasy of this. Now, I understand if people wanted more of the traditional Peter Pan story, the original. I get that, but I don't have a problem with Spielberg wanting to do something different. Now, Captain Hook himself, it's funny that this movie is named after the guy, but I don't really feel like he's the main character. I think it's just, when you do meet him, the story goes to a different level of mystical, fantastical nature. I mean, Dustin Hoffman plays Captain Hook, and he's great in the role, I think. He's just as over the top while being evil at the same time that I think helps this movie. Like, not only is he funny, like I said, but when he does kidnap the kids, and he's even coercing Peter Pan's son to think like he hates his father and to want to be with Hook and stay there with him, it's kind of a creepy and evil plot to do. Not just kill Peter Pan, but to turn his own son against him. I don't know, it made me not like the son, Jack, all that much. You have Bob Hoskins, Julia Roberts, like I said, who her story and finding out that she's in fact in love with Peter Pan and all that stuff. I really felt for her character, and I almost wanted the two of them to get together, even though technically Peter Pan had gotten married and had a family, but oh well. Maggie Smith played Wendy, the original girl that Peter Pan was in love with, and in fact, when they show the flashbacks of when Wendy was young, Gwyneth Paltrow played young Wendy. I was not expecting that. When I saw her, I said, holy crap, Pepper Potts! But, like I said, this movie isn't perfect. There's a couple of problems I have with it. Like, I admit that maybe if you are trying to sell this as either a kid's movie or like, hey, a Peter Pan movie, maybe to some people it took too long to get into the fantastical stuff. I understand that. There's this character, Rufio, who, when Peter Pan gets down there and he sees the kids, Rufio, I guess, is now their leader, now the Pan of the place, and he's just a dick. He's kind of a dick for no reason. That's what makes me dislike him more. And then at the end, they try to have this whole, oh, look, he redeems himself. I'm like, no, he doesn't. He does not redeem himself. I still don't like this kid. All the other little kids, I didn't mind them, but the one moment where the one kid goes up to Peter and starts like touching his face and moving his face all around him, like, this is kind of awkward. And I don't really know why pushing his face back like this makes him go, there's Peter, there he is. The set pieces and just the way the whole design looked, I like that. I didn't have a problem with the way everything looked. I just thought the moments where they did special effects and Peter Pan flying, I thought was a little weak. It looked a little dated. If you're saying, oh, it's 91, of course. I mean, Superman in 78 still looks good today. So I'm surprised that there wasn't more emphasis put on certain special effects. I was pretty upset to see that John Williams did the score for this. That just blows my mind because this had to be the most unmemorable score that John Williams has ever done. I usually love every score that he's done for movies, but this one, I couldn't hum or sing any song that he made for this. Probably the biggest thing that got me about the movie was that it's 2.5 hours long. What? I get nowadays that's the norm for like superhero movies and whatnot, but for 1991, for a Peter Pan children's movie, that's just way too long. I can't believe, as a kid, I did not mind watching this for 2.5 hours and I never got bored apparently. So again, Hook. I didn't hate this movie like I know some people do. Some people say it's Spielberg's worst film, which I find that hard to believe. I do have nostalgic feelings about it, so obviously that's clouding me a little bit. But I do admit it's not a perfect film, but I did like what Spielberg was doing with the story and what he brought to it. So again, I still enjoyed Hook. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Hook, and if you still like it all of these years later. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Later!